Welcome to Applying Leadership Theory, an example with Barbara Braden, presented by Christine, Alyssa, Chad, Jasmine, Bianca, Laura, Cassandra, Brooke, Medina, and Lexi.
In the year 1984, Barbara Braden, a registered nurse, developed a tool to help predict the risk of possible skin breakdown as a way to prevent pressure ulcers for patients. Prior to the work of Braden, current practice involved using the Norton scale, a method of assessing the severity of pressure ulcers. At this time, there was not a tool available to help prevent pressure sores. Braden, like many other nurses, had to watch as the patient she cared for endured great pain and suffering from these sores. This inspired Braden to advocate for patients and to develop a way of preventing these sores from occurring. The Braden scale continues to be used today as one of the most widely known and recognized tools for identifying patients' risks of developing pressure sores and has been translated to more than 14 different languages. As a registered nurse, Braden was responsible for caring for patients with pressure sores and conducting assessments to create care plans for their treatment. However, she saw an opportunity for change. She used critical thinking to recognize that current practice was not providing safe care for patients and raised questions to help identify what could be done differently, while also employing her assessment knowledge to develop this tool. Braden went above and beyond to make a positive difference for patients by using original and prioritized evidence-based decision-making to develop her vision. She advocated for the tool by showing nurses in the field how useful it was, and then empowering them to incorporate it into their practice. Braden used her position as a nurse to create new policy, which awarded nurses a better way of providing efficient and safe care for their patients.
The College of Registered Nurses of Nova Scotia has 5 standards of practice for registered nurses. The example of Barbara Braden, whom developed the Braden scale for pressure ulcers, relates to the CRNNS Standard 4 of Professional Relationships and Leadership. Standard 4.2 involves leadership in developing strategies to improve client care outcomes. Barbara Braden's example of leadership relates to this standard as she developed the Braden scale to prevent pressure ulcers in an effort to improve client care outcomes. Next, Standard 4.4 involves communicating and collaborating with other team members in an effective and timely manner to promote continuity in the delivery of safe, competent, compassionate, and ethical care. This standard relates to Barbara Braden as she took the leadership role to develop the Braden scale, where she then communicated this tool to other healthcare professionals, which led to the Braden scale being distributed within the healthcare system nationwide. Furthermore, by promoting the Braden scale nationwide, it became a standardized assessment scale for all patients that is safe, competent, compassionate, and ethical in its delivery of care. And lastly, Standard 4.7, which states acting as an effective role model, resource, preceptor, coach, and or mentor to clients, learners, nursing peers, and colleagues. Barbara Braden's leadership example also relates to this standard as she acted as a role model for her nursing peers and colleagues when she saw an opportunity for change and wanted to make a difference to enhance the quality of life for the patients who she saw were suffering from painful bed sores.
We have all been working closely with the LEADS framework this semester, but in short, it encompasses the current literature on health leadership, which describes the capabilities and behaviors required to make meaningful change. The LEADS acronym is posted on the left-hand side of our slide, which encompasses the capabilities that apply to all leaders, but will look different depending on the context. From our case study, I believe that a lot of these elements align with the capabilities and behaviors within the LEADS framework. However, the focus of this slide will be the L in LEADS, specifically how she leads self, and A, how she achieved results. So how did Barbara Braden lead self? According to the LEADS framework, an individual who leads self has the capabilities to manage themselves. This means they take responsibility for their own performance and health. A defining behavior within the responsibility performance area is the leader expresses hope, enthusiasm, and confidence in difficult circumstances. I believe that Barbara Braden aligns with this so closely as she witnessed many patients live with pressure ulcers and the prescribed interventions fail to meet their needs. What some may have accepted as a status quo or just failure, Barbara expressed her hope, enthusiasm, and confidence as she embarked on her journey to find a better way. Ultimately, her hopeful, enthusiastic, confident approach resulted in the creation of a very effective clinical tool which is still commonly used in everyday practice. So how did Barbara Braden achieve results? According to the LEADS framework, an individual who achieves results has the capabilities to set direction, which means they inspire vision by identifying, establishing, and communicating clear and meaningful expectations and outcomes. A defining behavior within the inspires vision area is that the leader advocates vision that is compelling, challenging, and dedicated to improve patient health. Barbara aligns extremely well with this criteria, as from what she witnessed in patient skin breakdown, she had an alternate vision. Her vision was compelling because it was one that imagined client care with less skin breakdown, every healthcare professional's dream. It was challenging because skin breakdown is such a huge problem, and lastly, she was dedicated to spending time with her clients, the literature, and colleagues to ultimately improve the lives and health outcomes of her clients and colleagues.
Lewin's theory of planned change. This theory consists of 3 elements or stages throughout the use of making change, and is most effective when used in a top-down style of approach. The main strength of this theory is that it is practical, versatile, and clear to use and understand. Kurt Lewin is a social psychologist who created the theory of planned change and also implemented the force field analysis, or FFA, which is a structure for identifying factors which affect particular situations and also provides movement towards a specific goal. The FFA ultimately assisted in helping to create the 3 elements of planned change theory because of how the concepts within FFA help to design specific action plans. The 3 stages involved in the theory of planned change are unfreezing, moving or transitioning, and refreezing. Unfreezing, or the first stage, is where the leader identifies the problem and recognizes what needs to be changed. A leader will create a sense of urgency for a change and also influence others to understand the need for the change. Moving or transitioning, or the second stage, is looking at a change as a process versus a single event and involves the creation of a specific action plan as well as inspiring others to attempt the change. Transitioning represents the reaction people experience in response to change and will require additional collaboration and teamwork in hopes of implementing the best change possible that will ultimately be sustained. The final stage, or refreezing. The aim is to stabilize the change, therefore implanting it into existing systems, such as various policies, practices, and cultures. And when refreezing, this allows for a new norm or higher level of performance from the change.
Lewin's first stage, unfreezing, relates to Braden's example because in order to make change, Braden had to recognize there was a problem with the current state of wound assessment. By performing the research necessary to create her scale, Braden brought others on board. In aggregating her assessment results, she made the problem clear for others to understand. In this way, Braden thought out others' set perspectives on pressure ulcer assessment, which allowed for the current climate and standards to continue. Braden mentioned, in reflecting on the success of her scale, that she thought the scale would not be as widely used as it is today. I think this sentiment fits with Lewin's description of the fear that is associated with the second stage of change, moving and transitioning. In choosing to share her work widely, Braden had to overcome this fear of the uncertainty change can bring in favor of driving the change onward. Through presenting her work to her peers and providing training sessions, Barbara was coaching others to overcome their doubts about her suggested change, or the fear of what the change would entail, and assured them that necessary change can be uncomfortable. The final stage of Lewin's change theory, refreezing, is where the change becomes solidified and ingrained into organizational practices. In her reflection, Braden remarks how she was willing to make the Braden scale available in multiple languages, and how she was willing to work with many nurses and allied health care providers in order to make the Braden scale more widely available in all practice areas. By engaging in these types of activities, I think Braden showed that she understood how to solidify the change that she was attempting to make. Taking all of these examples together, I think it is clear that Barbara Braden's example of leadership can be broken down into components that fit well with Lewin's theory of change. I think the components of Braden's practice of leadership show that change is not an episodic event, but is a process that takes commitment and drive. I think that this is the idea Lewin encapsulates in his theory of change as a process.
Originally developed by James McGregor Burns, who said the transformational leadership theory is based on the mutual empowerment of the leader and follower so they can achieve change and common goals. This theory is focused on change as the leader wants their followers to achieve their goals, share their visions, and empower them. To achieve transformational leadership in a hospital environment, the nurse must build connection with their followers using open, fair, and honest communication styles. The transformational nurse leader should also promote the independence of staff by promoting them drawing on their independent decision-making powers. Transformational leadership is really useful theory in the healthcare setting because it's an environment that's constantly facing change and as a result requires leadership that's adaptable. Additionally, it consists of 4 components, being idealized influence, inspirational motivation, intellectual stimulation, and individual consideration. So, idealized influence includes building confidence, admiration, respect, and trust in your fellow nursing colleagues. The nurse leader should be the role model on the unit and at the forefront of change, so staff are less hesitant to new initiatives. Inspirational motivation involves encouraging fellow nurses to work towards achieving common organizational goals while also working to improve their own practice and strive for positive change on the unit. Intellectual stimulation involves the nurse leader being creative and implementing new ideas that are evidence-based to better the clinical environment for nurses and other healthcare providers, and most importantly, their patients. Additionally, intellectual stimulation involves providing learning opportunities that are both formal and informal for fellow nursing colleagues. Lastly, individualized consideration involves the nurse leader promoting and supporting fellow colleagues to reach higher levels of achievement. However, the literature has said that this is really hard to do. Additionally, the literature points to the empowerment theory as fundamental to achieving this aspect of transformative leadership. Some tangible ways the nurse leader can empower and promote fellow nurses is by regularly providing positive feedback, empowering them through regular meetings where nurses can discuss their concerns and goals for the unit and what changes they would like to work to implement.
The leadership style behind the idea and implementation of the Braden scale relates closely with the overall theory of transformational leadership, that the leader wants to create change which enables their followers to achieve goals and ultimately empower them. Braden generated a change by creating a new way to assess pressure ulcers which offered improved reliability and validity, and this new tool empowered nurses to be able to achieve goals of reducing pressure ulcers while documenting them more effectively. Of the 4 aspects, Braden connects with the first 3. Idealized influence is demonstrated through her process. Braden not only had a new idea, but built on it by backing it with her own knowledge and literature. Through her actions, Braden gained trust from fellow nurses by offering not only an evidence-based tool, but the training to improve their clients' outcome. Braden has stated that at the time, nurses were looking for something that would help them manage clients with skin deterioration, and Braden stepped up to be that influencer. Inspirational motivation can be seen intertwined in idealized influence. Braden empowered the nurses by providing them with the training to use the tool and encouraged them to use their established nursing assessment skills to improve client outcomes and wound management. Additionally, Braden herself has recognized how this tool was only successful because of the nurses who were motivated to work with her to test it and incorporate it into their practice. The use of these tools give nurses the ability to create positive change and achieve goals for the good of themselves, the organization, and their clients. Finally, Braden exhibited her idealized influence and inspirational motivation to ultimately implement intellectual stimulation. Along with implementing an evidence-based new idea to better the clinical environment, Braden provided nurses with the opportunity to receive formal and informal education on the Braden scale. She provided this education knowing that nurses already have an excellent foundation of focused skin assessment skills, but just needed the right tool to be more effective. Therefore, by providing a learning opportunity, she demonstrates the ability to intellectually stimulate. Lastly, we unfortunately don't have examples of Braden performing some of the tangible action examples of individual consideration, but we can presume that she interacted with other nurses and received feedback regarding their struggles with wound care management. Nurses' struggles were likely considered in the process of creating a tool that provided safe, personalized, and effective care.
Another theory that we didn't touch on that could be applied in most nursing leadership examples is servant leadership. Servant leadership is established on the premise of patient-centered care and emphasizes the fact that nurses and every other member of the healthcare team should strive to provide the best care first for patients, but also be leaders for other members of the team. This applies to our case because Braden developed the Braden scale to improve patient outcomes. She also strived to ensure users of the scale were using it properly to best improve patient care. While all the research and predictive validity remains important, in the end, providing patient care we can is the goal of the healthcare team. The Promoting Action on Research Implementation Health Services Research, or PARIS framework, goes a little more in-depth to consider the evidence needed for a change to consider being implemented, the difference this change will make or how it is better or worse from what is currently in practice, and how this change is going to be implemented. Braden gathered the necessary evidence to justify the use of the Braden scale. She considered the difference it was going to make. She had predictive validity to show how it would improve patient outcomes, but she was also aware of the possible difficulties in implementing a new assessment into the hospital, considering both the paperwork and clinical aspect of teaching its usage. Finally, Braden was willing to provide the training and information to make the Braden scale accessible and useful in clinical practice by providing teaching on its use and also having it made available in many languages for use all over the world.
The integrated team effectiveness model conceptualizes interaction between team process and psychosocial traits, both of which impact team effectiveness. I use these models to identify what worked well in our team. We communicated in our discussion group, but it was more effective to collaborate in real time in our group chats and video conferences. We collaborated well because we were open to each other's ideas, and we all came into the group with open minds. Nobody was determined to have our group use only their ideas. We discussed at length nursing leadership criteria and nursing leaders. Through our group chats, we shared documents and PowerPoints. We coordinated our work to accommodate the workload of 2 student campuses. We made decisions by consensus. We began by everyone making suggestions. Then we discussed the pros and cons of each option until we arrived at a consensus. Our group didn't have conflict because we listened as everyone presented rationales for their ideas. Then we built consensus around which option would be best. We have a good balance of technical and interpersonal skills, so we used collaborative leadership. Everyone showed emotional self-awareness during our interactions, and we used our soft skills like motivation, communication, and reliability. Initially, we didn't criticize each other's ideas so that everyone would feel comfortable, but over time we exposed our vulnerabilities, which opened us up and built trust. We participated equally because of our non-hierarchical group structure and our open-mind group culture. We're a cohesive group because we are equally committed to our goal and there are no power differentials. We're all core team members with no one on the periphery. We had good problem-solving capacity because of our flexible team culture. 2 subjective outcomes of our group are that we perceived that we functioned effectively as a team, and we were satisfied with our teamwork.
One of the main challenges we faced as a group was the distance between members and our lack of convenient mode for communication. Not only did being distant from each other make it hard to meet, it also meant that we were unaware of each other's schedules and circumstances. Communication through Brightspace was difficult to maintain. However, once we established a Facebook group chat in which we received immediate notifications, it became much easier to determine who was in our group and what we each were hoping to establish as a group and take away from the course. The group chat also enabled us to determine each of our schedules and meet and discuss with each other via video chat. In this way, we all have demonstrated the situational theory of leadership. The situational theory of leadership is defined as the ability to adapt to circumstances in order to conquer challenges. By creating a more efficient mode of communication, we were able to adapt to our situation and conquer our challenge. Throughout making this PowerPoint at one time or another, each group member also demonstrated consultative leadership theory, which is task-oriented and focuses on the end result by consulting with others in formulating plans and making decisions. Throughout our group chat, we all communicated with each other and discussed ideas. In the group chat, we were even able to create polls, which made sure we were all able to receive each group member's thoughts and opinions on ideas, such as the topic for our project.